I need to share it as well.
We're sharing, guys. When we look down the phone,
Everybody, we're sharing. Hi, I'm Tom
sharing.
McKay. I'm your host for 3D Politics. All the exciting stuff going on here in Oklahoma. David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso here with all of the top news in Oklahoma. We're going to follow up with where we started or dropped off last time. David, tell us about this double jeopardy story at the federal level.
Well, actually, we weren't talking about it last time, but it was what I got home to. The news was C-SPAN was on.
Last week's news.
And the Supreme Court ruled that you may be in danger of life and limb for a single crime by multiple sovereigns. In other words, and what they're calling sovereigns are governments, state governments or federal government. So the Fifth Amendment specifically says that you cannot be tried more than once or be put in danger. A person cannot be put in danger more than once, in danger of life and limb.
Yeah, I saw The Fugitive. We all saw The Fugitive.
and so what has happened though is the federal government has come out with hate crime legislation and legislation of their own for various crimes. And if they don't like the kind of punishment that you're getting, they will bring their own charges for federal hate crime or other federal crime charges. Well, what has happened is Gamble was arrested for drug and gun charges. The gun charge was legitimate to the degree that he was a felon, and he was sentenced to a year in prison. Well, the state came back, or the federal government came back and got him 4 years. So he was tried twice
For the same
crime, but he argued that he should not be held to account for the other 3 years in prison, in federal prison, and the Supreme Court has now come back. Well, but the thing is that the state had already sentenced him and so forth, but he was yet tried again. So we have two trials of fact. We have and the Seventh Amendment says that only one jury only that fact stands. So if the state had held him innocent, we've seen in other cases, I don't have the case in front of me,
Guilty.
But they were held not guilty by the state, but then guilty by the feds, and they go to federal prison. So this case should anger anybody that wants to have a measure of rights upheld, because now the sky's the limit. They can do whatever they want, just pass some legislation, throw you in prison for whatever time.
My question on this is, not only, in my opinion, should we not have two trials, we should not even have duplicate laws.
Exactly.
Because when the original 13 states decided to make this child called the federal government, this commonwealth, much like the European Union is today, that's essentially what they were doing, was trying to pull together resources. They specifically said, these are your authorities, federal government. Mm-hmm. The rest belongs to the states.
Correct.
Powers.
Yes.
They don't have rights.
But this was a new idea in America. This was a new American idea.
So,
correct.
Unless it's an interstate gun running kind of scenario where interstate kicks in or something like that, it really should be up to the state to decide what the laws in their state are regarding firearms.
It's awfully convenient that interstate commerce governs everything. So
well,
it always comes in.
That's the whole twist in the whole thing is first it starts with, and it's a new twist in terms of the last 100 years, is that the federal government can prevent interstate trade and prohibit it, and that somehow is legitimate without a constitutional amendment, because we have rights to
Wait, you mean
trade.
Intrastate within that state?
And interstate.
Yeah, the interstate, I can understand the regulating interstate commerce, right?
But remember, regulation cannot be prohibition.
Right.
Otherwise it's not
Gotcha.
regulation.
Why is that?
Gotcha. Inside joke, folks. You'll catch on.
You'll get the joke about the bell here.
Yeah.
But
For people, since we have that break, for people who are just joining us, especially that one, what state? Where's this case out of? The case we're talking about?
Gamble, I think it was Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, not only was he found guilty, at the state level, federal government didn't think that the state jury gave him enough time, right?
Yeah, I'm
So-
trying to remember if he pled or if he actually had a jury trial. But either way, he pled in federal court, expecting to be able to appeal and get the time overturned under double jeopardy, because he was definitely put in danger of life and limb twice, because he was sentenced to 1 year for
he
his
has
life
to
and limb.
appeal to the federal government for that.
Because it was the federal charge that was the double.
Right.
And so it went to the Supreme Court. They then turned around on a 6-2 decision. And believe it or not, Gorsuch, who I have really liked so far with everything I've seen of him, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg got it right.
Yeah.
They were the two that got
I
it
don't
right.
believe that
Broken
because I don't
down,
believe that
doesn't
she's
it?
still alive.
No, Justice Thomas is being widely acclaimed for his separate but consenting opinion to the majority, and that was because he brought up stare decisis, and this is a term we should all know. Stare decisis is Latin for what has come before, and what it means is that they rely.
It is the laziest doctrine in all of government, and it's essentially the most powerful doctrine.
It is before the court, because what they do is they rely on precedent for everything else, and it's the way
We've
that they
always
push.
flung dung, so we've got to continue.
Exactly. Well, you know what? It really makes their job difficult, because they have to wheedle around, and it's kind of like going to church and hearing some guy lie about the Bible up in the pulpit, right? And how much work they have to work to get around the actual text.
Right.
Seems,
Well, that's
seems pretty
what the-
easy to me. It's pretty easy.
Okay, so here's an unintended outcome that prosecutors actually are not going to like. Because if a prosecutor can work out a deal, let's say in some conspiracy thing, if they can get one guy to flip on the rest of them and turn state's witness, and in exchange they offer him a sweet deal, well, now that guy's going to think, wait a minute, I might get a sweet deal in state court, but federal court's going to come after me because I am going to be admitting on the stand everything I
You
did.
better hold back just a little bit for that second sweet deal, guys.
So it's going to make
pacing.
it's going to make it a lot harder to prosecute. You follow what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally. I mean,
That's very interesting.
Not,
Yeah.
It means that you have to get a lawyer that is familiar with federal law as well as state, in order to be able to fight your state case, because very likely the feds could get involved, and so any advice you get has to include all this extra unconstitutional behavior. Yeah, there you go.
That means the word constitutional has been evoked. Invoked.
And I've done pretty well not to.
It's pretty good. We're at like
So far.
10 minutes or something. Wow.
As you know, David is the author of the website on constitutional grounds.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to go there every time you hear a bell from now on.
Yeah.
That's how that works, I think. That's right.
Wait, the Russians again?
Pavlov's going to make you do it. Comrade Pavlov.
Well, that's some pretty interesting stuff. Let's move to a state story about the car tags.
Absolutely.
Plate owner and such. Let me just read a quick part of this Channel 4. New laws on car registration and tags. Changes are right around the corner for Oklahoma drivers thanks to a new law taking effect July 1st. Under Senate Bill 1339, passed and signed into law during the 2018 legislative session, drivers will now keep their tags if they choose to sell a car. Paula Ross with the Oklahoma Tax Commission said it's meant to assist both law enforcement and the public. Isn't that handy both?
I love how
That
they,
works well.
It's
doesn't
for
it?
everyone.
I love how they tell you that them charging you money illegally is for your benefit.
You know,
What's another word for illegal?
Unlawful.
Okay.
sorry, not sorry, I think is how that is. But she says it helps both law enforcement and the public because it can currently be a hassle to prove a driver no longer owns a vehicle. Huh.
It could be
It's hard, isn't it?
It's a hassle to conduct an investigation, so I prefer to be able to just go on pepper balls blazing.
If it's that hard to prove a driver owns a vehicle, all the people who own illegal drugs should be looking into this to figure out how can I prove I don't really own these drugs.
You know, the thing they didn't say there, the big elephant in the room is...
And I didn't read the whole article, but yes.
No, and it's not in the whole article.
Okay, go ahead.
Folks, this is what's called a revenue-raising measure.
What do you mean?
According to our state's constitution, that if a bill results in increased revenue to the state, it must either get an emergency 75% passage in both chambers or be presented to a vote of the people. This could easily have gone to vote of the people in the last general election, but they didn't. They don't trust the people.
Why not?
Well, because
the people may make the wrong decision.
Okay,
right?
here's how it's a revenue-raising measure. When you would sell me a car, D'Ambroso, whatever's left of the registration for that year, the tag, comes with it. Okay, so it's like, oh man, there's 8 months left on
Sweet
that.
deal.
Sweet, yeah. It's kind of like a value-added thing. And even though I'd have to register the car, I wouldn't have to renew the tags until they're due. That's transferable, okay? So the state has no windfall in that. Now they do, because they're saying, D'Ambroso, keep that license plate. Now I'm driving a car with no license plate on it. By God, I've got 5 days, folks, to register that and get a plate on it.
So it sounds like you're getting a 5-day discount. What's wrong with this?
I thought you could get 15 with a paper tag.
So here's the thing, D'Ambroso, if you buy another car in addition to what you already have, that license plate that you kept becomes a coupon that says, until this month here, coming up, when it's due, I get credit for it. It's just a coupon. There's plenty of people, whether it's grandma going into the assisted living center or, family downsizing, or for whatever reason, people are downsizing vehicles. The state now gets to double register the same vehicle for that same...
Yeah, but you're not going to get charged for someone else running the pike pass.
Okay,
with your old tag.
That's a different thing. And here's where the law's always been on the books, and this is wrong in that report, is when you sell a car, you can go down to the tag office, fill out a form, yes, there is a little bit of fee, and notifies you've got an affidavit to them, I no longer own this vehicle. That says, state, don't give me parking tickets, don't give me pipe pass
But you're
violations.
asking probably a little bit too much for them not to send you the tickets, even though you've told them and informed them.
I'm telling you,
kind of expecting a lot.
if that
don't you
car,
I'm going to bring us out of the weeds
if
here,
that
as
was
soon as I can.
if that was the getaway car at a bank robbery or whatever, now you've got record. I wasn't part of that. I sold that car, and here's the evidence. That's what they're getting into. They already have that. The sad thing, folks, this passed overwhelmingly both houses. The people I expected most, I won't name names tonight, but the people I expected.
Thank you.
Every time he says he's not going to name a name, I'm bringing
Please
it.
don't name them.
But you can look it up. I'm going to put the links on the Sooner Politics not Sooner Politics, 3D Politics Facebook page on this. So next week, one more thing.
Because I want to get philosophical with
One
this and then work it into
One more
AI.
thing. There is no penalty stipulated for your failure to keep your registration that you registered your car in your vehicle.
No, they're going off the license plate.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
want you to
And-
not have a license plate so that you will be
But
pulled
even-
over for not
no,
having that license
even
plate.
if you-
That's what they want.
It's another level.
Even if you've done that, that's one part of this new law. Senate Bill 1339 from last year's spring session says you also have to keep that registration paperwork that has the little seal of the state of Oklahoma on it.
Yeah,
It's
why not?
white
That's
paper.
cool.
And that you got to keep that in your vehicle. That may be fine for your soccer mom,
It's cool.
soccer mom SUV.
I keep dumping
But
mags
for,
out of my
but,
glove box.
but for my little motorcycle there, I don't have a little place to keep that place to keep that.
I gotta
piece of
stop you
paper.
there. You don't have a motorcycle.
Well, I have a right.
Of way, maybe.
Here I am again.
And I speak on behalf of those who are suffering under the burden of this oppressive
I
government.
am concerned this is going
Thank
to
you.
take food off the SWAT team's table.
Oh.
Instead of kicking down 2 doors,
I rest
they're
my
only going to
case.
kick down 1 door.
This is a revenue-raising measure. Thank you very much.
Can I take us out of the weeds and way up into the philosophical
We'll see.
spot?
We'll see.
Sure.
The concept here, she says, because, which means there's a reason why they're passing this. And it's because it can currently be a hassle to prove a driver no longer owns. So you're going to prove a negative. Well, now, how do you show evidence that you no longer own?
Well, and this comes to the very heart of the problem. I'm glad you brought that up. Because
You're keeping your plate now.
well, no, here's what it is. Remember, you get a bill at the beginning of every cycle of your plate, your tag cycle. They send you a bill and they expect you to pay it. Well, if you don't own the car, now in California, where I come from, as part of the sale of the car, there was a termination of ownership form that you then turned in with your paperwork.
And we have that
And
no
and
problem.
and therefore it stayed with the previous owner so that they could turn it in
But
themselves.
it's too much to ask the bureaucrats, municipalities, to keep up with that.
The-
So
Well,
it doesn't
and-
matter
and
that you turn in that information.
The entire idea
It's
was
that
so
you don't.
or the entire point of this proof thing is people are coming back and saying, I sold the car. They say, well, it hasn't been re-registered, so you owe us the tags. And they say, I'm not paying you tags for a car that I haven't owned for a year.
Just pay the money.
And
Just pay the money.
And that becomes the hassle.
It's going to a
because-
good cause.
Just to touch on the tip of the proof of his point that it's a scam and a revenue thing, it says, however, the new law requires drivers to keep the registration and of a copy it in their cars. That would be you keep your registration in your car to prove what? That you no longer own a vehicle? No! You're keeping the registration to prove you own a vehicle, which means this concept that we're passing this law to prove that you no longer own a vehicle is totally bogus.
Right.
You cannot hold a piece of paper that proves you don't own something. It's absolutely
well,
conceptually...
no, that actually does
It's
exist.
called a receipt.
It is your no, it is your
Just on
it is your sale of it is your
That's proof of
For-
sale, David.
proof of sale.
Oh my gosh, that's
It's
not...
gone from my
that
inventory.
doesn't
It
mean
proves
I
that someone
don't
else
own
has
it. That
one
means I
less.
sold it.
We already have everything in
Yeah.
place to do just that. This is just one more thing, and here's the problem. And we found this out in our story, was it last week, about the cops in Blanchard, who really didn't know how to enforce the laws the way they wanted to the outcome they wanted, and so they just kind of made it up. Well, folks, there is no stipulated punishment for failure to keep your registration in your vehicle.
Not yet.
You got to do it, but it's up to a cop to figure out how to punish you, evidently,
in the meantime
in the meantime.
until
Well,
the
and this-
legislature clarifies it.
and which tells me that the lawmakers who wrote this weren't interested in the law enforcement part of it. They were interested in the revenue.
And the gatekeeping. They want people to show up somewhere to get a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and they do want the enforcement action because they want that plate off the car, because that will then force or initiate a stop.
Right.
Where they could
Yeah.
threaten to steal your
Right.
car by impound.
Yeah.
Because if you might be over 5 days, hey, if you're 6 days and you haven't registered the
Yeah.
car, paid the tax and
Yeah.
paid the tags, then you could lose the car
Right.
entirely.
But
because it
these
really
are
doesn't belong to
this
you.
is one bill with two laws involved. One was the license plate non-transferable. The other was the mandating you must now keep
And
registration
it only costs
evidence in your
$1.
car.
Sounds reasonable. Let's get to some commentary from the plebs.
Let's do it.
Blake Barber says, why don't they just have the seller mail the signed title with the buyer's address listed to State Department of Finance and Administration? And they can charge the new owner the registration and titling fees, which must be paid before the new owner can get the legal title and insurance on it.
Because that adds another burden on the people to now be the de facto tag agent in charge of handling the registration.
Well, that is.
If we could eliminate tag agencies, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. And Blake, I'm glad you brought
At least
asked
they get-
your question.
Yeah.
Because it really comes down to and all of the confusion and all of the angst that we are expressing about this bill goes to the heart of the initial scheme in the first place. Who owns your car? Who decides that you have a right to that car or not?
Yeah.
And does anybody other than the owner of that car have the right to say you cannot use it?
I know.
What kind of right?
Well, that would be a natural right
Okay.
that is codified in our Constitution.
Oh, yeah, I like it.
So before we had cars, we had horse and buggies. I assume that we put license plates on the rear end
And
of horses,
registration.
right?
Only Mel Brooks.
Okay. so a horse's ass
Or
must
Bud
have a
Light.
license plate. I guess that, right? That was somewhere in Alfalfa Bill Murray's state constitution.
It is this big, so
that
probably.
every horse's ass had to have a license plate on it.
I stand by that
No!
law.
This is ridiculous.
Well, I had a friend in commentary today say on social media, Norm Small-ago, he has a lot of law enforcement in his family, and I think he does loss prevention for a number of sites.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this goes against all doctrine on safety, keeping your address in your vehicle. So if you're ever robbed, essentially someone knows where to go to get everything else, right? You got some magazines in your car, right? Some firearm magazines. They know where to find the matching guns now.
Yeah.
And
And one word of caution here. We're talking about your registration. Do not, under any circumstances, keep the title to your vehicle in your vehicle. Because if somebody
unless
has
it becomes
that,
the law.
folks, it'd just be a matter of 24 hours, and what do you know? Somebody else owns your vehicle, and you can't even claim it's stolen now.
I always leave the
And they have
title
to
of
pay
my
for it.
I always leave the title of my vehicle next to my shoe and the kid in the back seat.
Okay?
Well, you'd be surprised at the number of people that don't know the difference between a title and a registration.
Well, yeah,
Really
I'm just
would.
trying to be smart aleck. One other point. This is standard procedure by socialists in the way that they push bad law. This, I think we agree, is bad law. Regarding the concerns, Ms. Ross says Oklahomans have been required to keep proof of insurance in their car for many years. So again, it has
Same thing.
it has momentum of
Stare
my God,
decisis.
we've been
Exactly.
So
infringing.
now we have two papers. Okay? We got registration and your insurance. And
Yeah, why not?
when are we going to get the officers say, your papers, please?
Exactly. Wasn't that
Exactly.
Hogan's here?
Well,
Wasn't the name of
that
all the
is-
articles
that
today?
is what was the point of the Blanchard stop. That is the point that they try to get to with every stop. They
Right.
want to demand your papers. Look at all the
right.
YouTube videos of all the BLM agents,
Yeah.
not Bureau of Land Management, the Border Patrol. At the stops where they're stopping American citizens and demanding to prove that you're an American citizen.
Well, these
It's
aren't
like,
these aren't
wait a
national
minute.
socialists. These are state socialists. What do you call
Well,
that?
these are tyrants because they come from every stripe, whether socialist or not.
Yeah, it
The point is, they
trickles
just want
Socialism
the control.
is tyrant. There's no difference.
Right, but not all tyrants are socialists.
But you're
Okay.
missing the point. here.
Yeah.
The point is you just have to say whoever won the World Series the year they ask you, and you go right on through the checkpoint. No problem.
You have a right to be left alone. That's what we learned from Blanchard. You want to be left alone.
Yeah.
In fact, if they arrest you, the first thing they have to tell you is that you have a right to remain silent.
Allegedly.
Okay, so
That's why they hold off telling you.
this
you
is
can
the
be
problem. Now,
arrested.
I will say,
You're letting the secrets out.
I will say, if I want to be able to post bond, I better have some kind of identification. But you don't even have to give that unless they have probable cause to arrest you for something.
They've
Well,
always got some of that.
Neat that probable cause can be generated out of nowhere. So they
Oh, I
always
realize
have
that.
it.
yeah.
But there was a reason I pulled
But
you over.
it is
the end.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It is
A reason.
It is actionable against that law officer if they are untruthful in claiming.
Good luck proving
Good
that.
luck, good luck
I
proving that,
understand
and when they lie to cover their to
I
CYA,
understand
then,
that.
then it's
Yeah, and you might find out when they impound your car, they found some things in there that you have no idea were in there. They will be.
And
proven.
since the
Yeah.
Supreme Court has ruled that the fruit of the poisonous tree is actually good, that you literally can be held liable, even though the stop was illegal. They then
The
find
fruit of the poisonous
it's
tree.
called
Wow.
it's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. That the stop was illegal. The
illegal
poisonous
stop.
tree.
But they found something.
They found something. It would have been thrown out in years past. Now they said no. We've got to consider their motive and their mentality behind it.
Yeah.
If we
They're
deemed
just-
that they
You
were
have
a
to
good
consider
motive, then
if they're a good person or not, and anyone serving the public is a good person. So it's a nice little circle they make. It's called a reasoning perfection circle.
Yeah.
And so you start with the conclusion. That conclusion proves the conclusion. But Mike Miller says if you actively object to an infraction, you are then impeding the investigation.
yes, we saw that in Blanchard.
Well, in Trump, obstructed justice by just saying I'm not guilty.
Yeah,
Right?
by saying I don't like this, and
Okay.
I wish they would stop.
I want to commend Don Rubon, my former state senator, and now he's down in Florida working their legislature. He said that this is what we call laws of government convenience. These are things where they make the citizens jump through hoops to make the government's job easier.
But they're already serving you.
Yeah.
How much more do they have to serve you?
I'm sorry.
Don't
they're
make your
not
server's
serving
job any harder than
me.
it
They
has
are
to be.
not
you.
serving me, folks. I'm sorry. This is problem. We are now serving them.
They might serve you papers.
Our job.
They don't have your papers.
Our job is to feed the government.
Yeah.
And if we have anything left over, we might get to enjoy
Well, if you look at how handsome and talented and smart Beto is, don't you want to work for him? Don't
Oh
you want
my
to think
God.
about the world you're making
Well,
for
look,
him?
you work your butt off to provide for your family, and before you even get your paycheck, the government took their part out of it.
Well, just
Well,
4 to 5 times more than God does. I mean, sounds reasonable.
Well, and you know what's really interesting is that the first point of our Bill of Rights in the Oklahoma Constitution is that you have a right to the profits of your own industry.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
And they are always looking at taking that away. And
Even when they have a budget surplus, they're like, we need the biggest tax increase in history. Why? Because we have the biggest
And
surplus in
another
history.
thing on
They
that,
match.
It's literally stipulated in our state constitution that taking away a man's means of providing for himself is not allowable even under a criminal felony statute.
Wow.
So we have in our civil
they don't like the
asset
13th
forfeiture,
Amendment.
they don't even charge you the crime and they take your property.
Right, your property
but our
might be guilty.
Constitution says that we are supposed to, even when somebody's guilty, if they used a car or they used a horse or whatever, you still can't take it from them.
Hey, if you've just
Okay.
joined us, you're watching 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your host. I've got David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. All things political in the state of Oklahoma and beyond. We're discussing everything from car plate ownership to Elizabeth Warren, and we're going to move also into this Veritas story.
Okay.
Project Veritas. You want to move on to this
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren? Now, last week I was talking about the 2009 New York Times story about $467 million over the course of a homosexual couple's lifetime is what it costs them if they don't get the marriage benefit.
467,000. The 467 million figure
Oh, yeah.
actually
He
comes
does the
from
numbers.
CARE. Actually comes from the LGBTQ
That's right. That's right.
123
So,
Alliance.
thank you, David. I appreciate that. The Elizabeth Warren is talking about $57 million in tax refunds for married LGBT couples. Now, the story I was talking about last week was 467,000 per married LGBT couple. So
And
what
this
is
is money they have to pay to the Pope, right, for their sin?
I think George Bush is in on it too, but the Jews. But anyway, the 57 million. What's 57 million divided by 467?
I don't know.
You got to figure
well,
there.
the problem is that's over
25 cents, I think.
I mean the 467,000 is on how many years?
A lifetime.
A lifetime. Well, the problem is the numbers don't show that very many of them stay together for a lifetime. They are
Oh, David.
together for a very short time and then
So
split.
57.
More
Yeah,
than
your
more
average
than the
number-
average.
yeah.
More than the average.
Yeah, homosexuals on average are more they're more
Promiscuous.
polyamorous, more polygamous than have more partners than straight couples on average. It's just a fact.
467.
Those are just the numbers.
I think I saw one study indicated the average
120
homosexual
million?
relationship lasts about 2 years. relative to your average heterosexual
I do
relationship
know.
lasting.
I do know some that have been together for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
But they're
Sure.
they're the abnormality, not the normal.
While I can't run the numbers to figure it out exactly how much it's going to benefit LGBT couples, this is exactly what I was talking about last week. This is a push to try to legitimize gay marriage, same-sex marriage, as though it's the same as opposite-sex marriage, for $57 million.
What's wrong with
This is
two people that just love each other, Tom?
Well,
Why is your heart so full of hate?
What this
I
tells
can't help
me,
it.
what this tells me, when this becomes something real, our government's too big. It ought not matter to our government whether you're sharing your house with somebody the same sex or different sex.
The Refund
It should.
Equality Act is what it's called, and it's going to remove the limits that the federal tax has. The federal tax relief, you can go back and amend for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay? They're going to change that so that they can go back. Statement regarding the reintroduction of the Refund Equality Act. Elizabeth Warren said, the federal government forced legally married same-sex couples in Massachusetts to file as individuals and pay more in taxes for almost a decade. It's only right that we change this tax code to make it fairer for all. What is fair is if homosexual couples pay more in taxes, because heterosexuals provide new average taxpayers. My wife and I have created 5 new average taxpayers, which means we've added to the tax revenue.
Well, no,
These
no,
people
no,
don't have.
No. I'm going to dispute that.
Please.
Number one, they've got Amtrak trains running all over Massachusetts, which we pay for, and we don't get squat here in Oklahoma. So, Ann Warren, I'm sorry, but you can ball somewhere else. Your state gets more federal funding than our state does.
Yeah, I
Look at the big dig. I mean, there are
Yeah,
billions
I know.
spent there.
there's also a companion legislation, Pride Act of 2019 by Judy Chu, Democrat from California.
Right.
And it prevents, alter the federal tax code that currently prevents married couples from amending their tax returns beyond previous 3 years. So they're going to want to go back, I think it opens it up indefinitely for however long they've been married.
I just think what we've got to do is, take Massachusetts, who took the deal to get Medicaid expansion money from the federal government to their state. Oklahoma didn't do that. Federal government ought to just cut each one of us a check for what they would have given to Oklahoma. I mean, this is endless. Absolutely endless.
Well, what's ridiculous is they're pushing people out of the category of individual into the group association, even if it's just with one person to start with. They don't want you filing individually. They want you filing as a partner. And they force you to file individually in the penalty.
Yeah. I mean, if I wanted to file separately for whatever arrangement my family has, I can't get the cost sharing on the national, healthcare exchange.
Well, if
I have to file jointly. Is that fair? Ann Warren seems to be focusing Elizabeth Warren. It seems to be focusing on one little deal where she can say, "Hey, Massachusetts didn't get a good deal here. You know what? We don't get the federal highway funds here that we send to Washington either."
Well, stop and think about it. It's not equal protection under the laws. It's not equal taxation, because some get deals, others don't. I'm single, so I don't get a break.
Yeah.
Others do.
Yeah.
This is a financial incentive to call yourself gay. There's been 3
Thanks for paying
movies
for my
made about
public
it.
school.
And that just tells you
I
our
just want-
government is too big.
Yeah.
Because this shouldn't be happening. Most of what the federal government's doing should be happening at the states anyway.
Well,
I just
and-
want to add, you can call her Ann Warren because she's already race fluid, so she might as well be
Call her anything
name
you want,
fluid.
Dave.
That's right. The real thing is, and going to your point about the kids and how much should be paid by one or another. Really, it comes down to the amount of service that you use, because in reality they are meant to be protecting our rights. That's the
They who?
government.
Government is meant to protect our rights.
Secure our rights. That
Okay.
is the point of forming government, so that
Right.
we can come together and we are not in some anarchistic, water world kind of a situation where we have to just protect ourselves at all costs all the time. So that is the purpose of government. Beyond that is actually unlawful. Okay? And we get, I mean, you can have some constitutionally, you can have some roads and, you know, mail service and things like that. But you can't get into all of the social programs and everything like that, because those are all unlawful programs. There's no constitutional.
Where are they prohibited by the Constitution?
The 10th Amendment.
But these football stadiums cost a lot of money. We can't do it without the government. Yeah. The gathering place costs a lot of money.
Checkmate, Oldham. Checkmate. You're done.
Is this not an incentive to file as gay? I mean, this is literally a $57 package, $57 million package to file as gay.
Well, I identify as a lesbian, so it's multiple hate crimes whenever a Democrat disagrees with me. They're literally
My car
a bunch of racist
identifies as a horse. I don't need a license plate.
Yep.
In fact, don't you have a Mustang?
I do.
Bingo!
It's literally a horse.
Giddy up, pony.
That's right.
Hell hath no fury like that of a pony scorned.
I
You
lose
want
the
to try
back
to get
end of
into
my
the
carbon
Fort
credits
Sill
and the methane.
concentration camps?
Yeah, let's talk
Okay.
about that.
So, Fort Sill.
Good choice of language, because they think that people are trying to get into concentration camps.
break it
Isn't
in.
that the conceit of the
Okay.
whole thing?
Now, this started, it was about 3 or 4 years ago when I remember Congressman Jim
1939.
Jim Bridenstine was trying to get on down there to find out, hey, what's going on with all these minors that just flooded into the country without any, you know, they were illegal aliens regardless of their age. And Obama was doing this, and he was separating kids out from adults and
He
stuff
wouldn't
like
do that.
But anyway, so now,
And this was at Fort Sill.
Fort Sill.
We have to make
Right
that.
on.
Which,
That's-
yeah.
brings it
So
home.
now Fort Sill, a historic part of our nation's military. It's an army base there. Goes all the way back to when the cavalry ran it, and you know, Geronimo once spent time there. He was trumped up on a bunch of garbage charges to begin with, but because it was a territory, yes, it was a federal facility. You know, he was tried in federal court, you know, territorial court, and held there. And then evidently, now I find out, Japanese internment camp during World War II, one of the locations.
That's my
was
next
there.
meme, by the way. Get ready for that
Yeah,
one.
and stuff. But anyway, what we've got going on is a crisis of way too many just flooding over our borders, and yet our U.S. House of Representatives will not raise a finger to provide additional relief, leaving the administration to have to be as creative as they can to find places to
Why
put
would
these
they? They
people.
benefit from the crisis.
Well,
why would they?
without the money to
Democratic majority does
without the
benefit.
money to properly staff, to have, you know, enough people running this, or to process things out so that people are determined, yes, either you do get asylum here or you don't, and bye-bye. You know, we are languishing because we don't have the funds for a crisis, and yet who's bad-mouthing about it? Let me tell you, these the Democrats in our federal government who are whining about what Trump's are doing are the same one that were applauding Obama for doing the same thing.
For separating children from their parents at the
And-
border?
And I'm telling you, this is absolutely posturing.
It's so funny too, because a lot of the images going around in the media of evil orange man bad Trump, separating children from their parents at the border, they were actually taken during the Obama administration. It's
Right,
absolutely hysterical. You can like right click
Yeah.
the file and go to the info. It's like they're like from 2014.
Yeah.
The images.
I'm telling you, in the way this administration is operating in this area is almost identical to what Trump is doing. It's actually a little bit better in some ways, but, you know, and I remember when G.W. Bush was leaving office, he did an interview. He said, most of the things that happen in the administrative part of our government here are pretty much set, and the people that come after me are going to do essentially what I did. Doesn't matter whether it's a D or an R. And I'm finding that to be very true on some of these federal responsibilities, like protecting our borders. You know, so Trump's not doing much different than Obama, and yet
Other than seeking to address the issue and creatively using tariffs to mobilize the Mexican National Guard to their southern border. I mean, he is doing a lot there, and of course, what I like to say, what I wanted to say earlier too, is it's hilarious that Trump is being condemned by Democrats that have used even stronger language in condemning illegal immigration. I mean, you listen to the Clintons in the early '90s, or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I mean, they sound like Donald Trump times 2 on this issue. Yeah. And they've all suggested building a wall, and they've all suggested cracking down. But they realize now that they're murdering their natural voting-based demographic at such a high rate that they have to import new voters.
Yeah, if you look at how our federal government changed around the time we got the 16th and 17th Amendment, that was right after a big flood of new immigrants, including my great-grandfather and grandmother coming in Ellis Island.
No better argument against immigration.
When we had a whole bunch of immigrants who didn't know the history, the culture, the heritage, to the degree that a child growing up here would know about why we formed the kind of government we did, the federal and the state. To them, that's why you saw all of a sudden, hey, it shouldn't be up to legislatures to pick the 2 senators. We'll just make it a popular vote. Or, it sure would be nice if we had a federal income tax, but as long as it's only millionaires who are going to pay it. That's how it was sold on them. And so I am concerned about a flood of immigration if they aren't properly educated in why we do things the way we do.
All because the research numbers indicate that it doesn't matter. Foreign-born immigrants south of the border favor far-left policies at a rate of 80%.
Yeah, but if I'm from Colombia coming here, what am I going to want to see? Probably the
Colombian
things...
governance, according to how people actually
At least the best parts of Colombian government. And the same would be true whether it was Germany or Vietnam or wherever. I'm going to want to keep the good and get rid of the bad. And most nations don't have the heritage that we have here that is unique for the type of government we have. And that's my concern about the immigration. Now, I will give Trump this. He's looking long-term, seeing a barrier wall is necessary. Yes, the Democrats have said that, but did they mean it? The Republicans did. Trump is the only one that seems
kind
to
of like
mean
moving the embassy
to
Jerusalem.
Bingo.
Everybody said it, but there's only one guy that did it.
Yes.
So
I'm sorry, you were saying.
No. The real thing is, if they were serious about it, they would change the reasons that people are coming here. They're coming here for free money, free handouts. They're coming here because, hey, we just let them through. Hey, all I have to do is come and say, I'm a refugee. Yeah. And they're in. So if that's the case, and they don't, the only wall is being built to keep people from getting to that point, so that they can't say, hey, I'm a political refugee.
I will tell you this, though. I would rather, and this is going to sound bigoted as can be here, okay, and stereotypical. I would rather take 1,000 Latin American families than 1,000 Eastern European families, because I know the family values that I've seen from the people that I've interacted with here, because we do have a large Latin American contingent here. And some of the most family values oriented people, and I'm being bigoted, I'm being absolutely stereotypical,
well, the biggest family there is the socialist family.
But I'm saying this. I'm saying this because there's a lot of people within my own political sphere who look down their noses on Latin Americans. And I'm telling you, they are our allies in many ways when it comes to the culture, when it comes to the values of family, the values of self-reliance.
Like in Venezuela or Guatemala or Mexico.
I'm telling you, compared to what you see in Democrat socialism, which is much of Europe now, I would rather keep that in Europe.
Well, you see who they've replaced their socialist regime with in Venezuela, or they're attempting to. Another socialist. They're like, wow, socialism didn't work. Let's try socialism.
Let me tell you, Venezuela has a heritage going back over the last 100 years that's been fantastic. It's other than this last 20 years, it has been a great country.
Well, what about Mexico or Honduras?
Yeah, I'm
Or
telling you.
Colombia?
Yeah. Colombia,
They're
right now,
kleptocracies.
Colombia, you don't hear much
They're
because
narco states.
Colombia has cleaned up immensely.
Yeah.
They have.
Immensely.
But that's because they finally got
On
a
the
ruler who wasn't
narcotics.
tyrannical.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you went to Argentina,
And now, how much does cocaine cost, David?
yeah, if you went to Argentina, you would find it to be so similar to American culture, except they speak Spanish.
Argentina and
It's a
Chile.
That's because that's where all the
Argentina
Nazis
and
went.
Chile. Dear God.
Yeah, they all speak Spanish. Right?
I'm too tired for this.
So no, the culture doesn't bother me. I enjoy learning new cultures. That
It's not
doesn't
about, it's
Yeah.
about values, about political values, because that's what we're talking about. That's going to be the direction the country goes. I agree. I don't mind immigrants from nations that value liberty, like Chile,
Yeah.
like Argentina. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter their ethnic background or their cultural background. What I do look at is data. And we have a lot of data that it doesn't suggest, it literally states it is reflective of the self-reported views of many of these immigrants.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, 80% of them support far leftism. Not just Democrats. They do vote for Democrats, but they vote for the Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, can we segue from that into?
Well, not yet, because I want to add. Well, the reason
Okay.
that works like that is from simple psychology. There's a famous experiment. They put a fish in a 3-foot tank, and they put a barrier 1 foot in. They make the fish live in the 1 foot end of the tank.
And then the fish
then
turns gay. I know, I saw that.
Yeah, but they get a tax break.
Frogs are
They get a tax break. But they pull the barrier out, and the fish, even though the barrier is gone, won't swim past where it's learned to stay. And this is the same problem you have with
Yes.
fish. Basically, they've learned that I eat gruel and I get it from them. And as long as that's what it is, they'll just
And there's
do that
another
again.
psychological-
So you're talking about the slave mentality.
Yeah, basically.
There's
yeah.
another effect, it's called mere exposure. People like something simply because you like it more the more times you're exposed to it. No matter
Yes.
what it is.
Yes.
No matter how awful it is or mundane
yeah.
it is, or
Right.
you like it more. And for whatever reason, a combination of these factors or maybe some other confounding factor, but people tend to vote for what they've already experienced. When people come from, and I've said it a million times, I'll say it a million more, they come from California, they come from the People's Republic of Washington, Oregon, and New York, and they move to Texas that has very liberty-oriented constitutional laws.
Yeah.
They vote for the leftism that has destroyed their communities, and that's what Austin,
feels comfortable.
Texas, is a bastion of it. People do not connect those two things. So that's my pushback on your statement. But I do agree with some good analysis here.
Okay.
Yeah, and what did you want to get
So it gets into the whole thing about the bringing the culture and being naturalized, basically, into our culture, includes that we need to do the same thing to native-born folks. Because how many of our listeners are actually a part of the problem and as big a part or bigger than the immigrants that
They
we're
would do
so
that.
afraid of?
They would
So
do
you
that.
want to talk about the public schools then?
Well,
I mean, there's your problem. The
Well, no,
public
there-
schools
that's-
has let us down teaching constitutional behavior. Boom.
well, you are absolutely correct, but the thing is that where do the constitutional school or the public schools come from? They come from forced charity from us, right? From the taxpayers, and from the various means that they get them.
What's
Okay,
another word for forced charity?
what's that?
What's another word or phrase for forced charity?
It would be slavery.
Eleemosynary. Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Man, I was trying to go to some taxation is theft meme, but
Yeah, that's
whatever.
Well, the thing is that the question I have is how much are you a part of the problem? Because when you take any problem down, it comes down to the individual being a participant. So you don't have theft if there isn't someone to buy the proceeds to make the theft worthwhile, or to steal the stuff. So you're not having break-ins in houses if there isn't a fence out there and somebody to buy the stolen
So
goods.
Batman's parents were responsible for their own death, in your opinion, because they didn't karate chop the guy that was robbing them.
No. Okay, you're taking that down the road. But the point is that the fence is as as guilty and as much a part of the problem, and the person receiving the stolen
I get
goods.
you, but what do we
Okay,
do? Yeah, some
so
people
here's the
benefit from this
question.
redistribution.
So here's the question, and this was something that was brought home to me by a document that was shared. The Kaiser Family Foundation, Henry J. Kaiser, his foundation put out a document.
Okay, now that's separate from the George Kaiser.
This is
Foundation.
not George Kaiser
Yeah.
from Tulsa. This is the Henry J. Kaiser. He was the shipbuilder turned insurance magnate.
that
Kaiser.
Kaiser,
Okay,
not Wilhelm.
and what I was, and I'll share the link later, but this particular document had the number of Medicaid financed pregnancies by state, and it's a percentage of pregnancies, and I was shocked at the number of pregnancies that are financed by the various states or within the various states.
Oh yeah.
How much do you think that Oklahoma actually is? You know the answer.
I'm not gonna say.
Sooner care. I mean, it's
$5.
huge.
No, I mean the percentage of pregnancies that are financed in whole or
5%.
part.
It's when you got little kids and you got pregnancies, getting on Sooner Care is easy.
It's 60%.
All the single mothers. All the single mothers. All the single mothers. All the single. Put your hand
No,
up.
I'm telling you, families.
Yeah.
I do. Families who are not in poverty still get Sooner Care paying for their
And
childbirth.
this goes to my point.
Yeah.
Okay, where does Sooner Care come from? It comes from the taxes of everybody who's paying taxes,
Yes.
So-
Both state and federal.
both state and federal.
That's
So
kind of unfair to gay people that often don't have children, don't you think?
That's true.
Should they have to? Should they have
Elizabeth
to pay for that?
Warren, get on it.
and so.
I'm breaking old.
But here's the
I'm
sounds like
I'm
a book.
thinking it's a great
Break it
comeback, but the problem is Elizabeth Warren would give them an out.
Yes.
Right.
She would give
Yeah.
them
She's
an out
that
for that.
progressive.
Yes, she's promoting
Wow.
group rights.
Adoption
instead of-
credits if you're gay.
Only for
Well,
gay.
but the thing is, but nothing for
I just gave her
I
an
think that's-
idea.
but
I
nothing.
actually sounds
The
like
Margaret
it.
Sanger Fund
Holy
for.
crap.
But here's the thing: she would be against public school vouchers or credits for homeschoolers
David, I'm just
who
gonna
are not
stop
putting
you.
a burden on the
Yeah.
system.
If we don't all throw into the pot, right, in a collective taxation and redistribution, have you really thought about this? I mean, who in the world is going to teach the inner city kids how not to read
Yeah.
over 10 or 15 years of education if you're not paying tens of thousands of dollars in taxes? Have you thought about that? Who's
Yeah,
going to
sure.
teach
There you
them
go.
how to not
5%.
read?
So
yeah.
the question for the listener is, and for us at the table, is how much are we a part of the problem? How much are we taking of all this unconstitutional, unlawful taxation, and have we cleaned up our lives yet to get out and not be a receiver of stolen
Net
goods? Because it
receiver.
literally is stolen goods.
Hold on, I just want to say our viewers would not do that. They're the best viewers. They're
Both
the most
of them.
virtuous and intelligent people that have ever lived.
Well,
but I admit I had been a consumer of that sort of thing.
well,
So
the argument is, if we're going to have an entitlement, then the recipients of those entitlements should be an objective criteria, not just people who like the entitlements, but everybody who is eligible.
Well, what if they objectively like
well,
the
wait a
entitlement?
minute.
Yeah.
No, let's. And what really triggered my thinking on a lot of this was a conversation about public school and so forth. And it was all this wheedling about what should be, discussed as volunteers, investors in a charity.
Yeah.
And you responded to the thread, and the point is that we have to fundamentally change our form of government, our constitutional form of government, in order to have forced taxation for charity.
Yeah.
You have to change it, and it has never been changed. The people have never given their constitutional consent.
That's because
Yeah,
living,
I'm just going to
To
give you.
it.
Yeah, there you go.
living breathing document.
Michelle Bachmann had this when she was running for president in 2012, in that her family had a farm, and that farm did get some farm subsidies, but
So she's
But-
guilty.
Whoa.
Her family was
okay,
guilty.
she said, look, if we're going to have this program, then it's going to be open to everybody who's eligible, all farmers, not just farmers whose politics agree with it.
Yeah, but do you want to be part of farm subsidies?
No, I'm talking to the
So-
legality of it. The legality
No, I mean,
of
to
it.
end up paying
Yeah.
for it, because he's
David,
not a
David.
recipient.
Okay, are you going to say, because I don't like our tax money going for city parks, I can no longer go to that city park because I'm against our government funds going towards it?
Well,
You
are
can't
being-
use it unless
are
you agree with
being
funding.
consistent with your thoughts on this? One, are your thoughts constitutionally consistent? Number two, are you being consistent with the Constitution? That's the
Let
question
me
I'm
ask
being
you,
asked.
David,
Should he be
about the
consistently wrong about
Let me ask you about the
Constitution?
the United States Patent Office. Isn't the United States Patent Office, in effect, helping encourage winners and losers? I mean, the Patent Office was designed so that it would help inventors create
Yeah.
wealth. So that's subsidizing inventors.
No, it does not subsidize. It only protects them
Okay.
from having their ideas stolen and
Stolen.
well, hang on. They created it. They're the creator of it. That's the only thing. Now, mind you, the Patent Office is a constitutional position. We
That
can
doesn't make it morally right.
Hey, we can amend the Constitution.
Yes, we
There's
can.
no problem with that.
And we do
The
need to.
problem is that none of this forced charity has ever been constitutionally approved.
Yeah,
I love the
There's
honesty.
Say the word,
zero.
David.
Property.
I'm just saying, look,
Zero.
If you will say El Emocionary, I'll
yeah,
ring the bell.
look,
I disagree with you on the definition of it.
yeah, I'm just saying there are plenty of bond questions on the ballot. Some I voted for, most I didn't vote for. But because they put in a city park or they put in the big arena downtown, if I didn't vote for it, now you're saying I can't use it?
Well, Blake's
No,
got
no,
Blake's
no,
got
I'm
a good
calling-
point. To your point, you know, the chat saying Blake Barber's saying you can't afford not to use what the government makes free because you've already paid so much
It's
for
prepaid.
it.
It's
Well,
You've already paid for it, and depending who you are.
Well,
Exactly.
hey, well, that's
That's
So-
a great
so what are we
point
gonna do?
because it breaks you so bad financially with this oppressive government, this force stuff, that you almost have to take some
no
of
matter
it
how
just to
crappy
survive.
the product is, like
It's-
the roads.
It's herd immunity at a taxation thing. You're automatically caught up in the
Connected.
wave of it, right?
It's difficult. I'm just saying you should not self-impose something when it's going to put you at a great disadvantage.
It's true, Mike.
okay. So in other words, let's go back because remember that lawfully it's theft. Okay, forced charity is theft. If you don't want to give it and it's not voluntary,
If it's
it is
charity,
the
yeah.
theft of your money.
Yeah,
We're
so
not
mine's on
talking
the
about
phone with
because
the
it's a
IRS.
violation of your rights to your property,
Yeah.
to utilize your property as
Yeah.
you see fit to give to whom you want to or not.
Then
Yeah.
it's lawful theft.
I'm just saying.
It's a theft under color of law.
Okay,
You know,
I'll go with
keep
that.
in mind, farming, agriculture, ranching, all that is a competitive business. And for the Bachman family not to take what all the other farmers do, takes away their competitiveness. Eventually, they go
Well,
under.
here's the thought process behind this. We as a state, and this is the argument for states and local governments taking federal funds that are unconstitutional. Okay, the entire point is we can't live without them. We can't do the things we got to do. We can't get the businesses in. We can't keep the businesses. We can't keep the tax if we don't have the federal money because we can't keep the streets up. Blah blah blah. And
Look, you said streets, so go ahead.
no, they
I know.
blame it on the streets because they're wasting
know.
money on all.
School.
At least
Anyway,
all
All right.
So the
we gotta wrap it up here. Go ahead.
So
Finish
the
it off.
entire point is that at what point do you break and wean yourself from the federal teeth?
You're right.
And to what cost and find ways to get around without it. and put pressure on your legislature and your neighbors to do the same, so that now everybody is equal. And we have to nullify. We should not be paying the federal tax bill. Our state should be protecting us from all these unconstitutional federal
Step
bills.
1, become entrenched in philosophy. Step 2, become radically wealthy.
Well,
That's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta
that's
do.
the answer to everything.
Hey
in
kids,
terms
you've
of
been
money.
watching 3D Politics Live on Facebook. I'm Tom McKay with David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso, the 3 most important Davids here in Oklahoma. Don't forget to catch us every single Monday from 7 to maybe past 8.
We're gonna go past 8 today because
right.
Blake Barber's coming on. We
Okay,
don't know what
cool,
we're
we
gonna
got
do.
more.
We're gonna have
yeah.
a special guest at the end of this, but
Oh,
we've got
good.
a couple more important stories.
Who's
I
got
know
some?
because
Yeah.
they're my stories.
Oh,
Who's
right.
Blake? Who's Blake?
Who's Blake?
Blake is he's a guy. He's just a guy.
Just a guy.
Just like Pink, that song. She's
I
just a
like
girl.
Has
Blake's
he
just a guy.
apologized yet for being a guy?
I'm gonna ask him about that. I'm gonna encourage him to be brave and apologize. Well, he's a white guy too. You gotta apologize for 2 things, Blake.
All right. That's
So
it.
what's our next? Oh, you're going to interview somebody?
Well, I mean, we'll at the end, but
We'll cut the tape and then start a new one.
yeah, I guess we'll just tease. I mean, there's a breaking story today on Drudge about
All
Google just admitting, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Veritas.
Yeah, that they manipulate the algorithm.
Yeah.
And a Google executive said we've got
So-
to do.
Okay, so we're going to take a few minutes for you to go to the refrigerator, go to the toilet, and be back here. We're going to start part 2.
Part
tonight.
2.
Yeah, overtime.
Break. Whoa.
Hour 2.
Crazy night.
Just unplug.
Crazy.
I'll let you. I'm not.
Just gonna, I got you right here.